Okay, it is 5 o'clock. Welcome to our Thursday Zoom with myself, Katie Rice, District Supervisor for the Ross Valley and parts of San Rafael, it's District 2. Been doing these Zoom-ins every other Thursday, providing a little bit of an update in terms of what's going on with regards to the COVID crisis, in terms of the county's response. And then also I've been inviting guests from different parts of the district to talk about things that are going on in their community. And this week we're going to have Mayor Catherine Way from the city of Larkspur. And Larkspur's fairly new, almost new as in parallel with the COVID crisis, their new librarian, Franklin Escobedo. And we'll welcome them on in just a little bit. But first I wanted to give you a little bit of an update. There's been a lot that's happened in the last couple weeks, as has been for the last, 2.5 months now. Really a rapidly changing situation. We are in a much different place today as the county of Marin and the community of Marin than we were even 2 weeks ago, or certainly 4 weeks ago, or at the beginning of this crisis. As most of you are undoubtedly aware, we've really put in place the medical capacity, the testing capacity now, the contact tracing capacity is in place. We have the personal protective equipment that we need our healthcare providers to have. Our hospitals have 30-day supplies. We're really in good shape on all those fronts. And hence you've seen over the last few weeks some sequential reopening of the economy, as it were. And most recently last week, as of Monday, actually Monday of this week, opening of retail, curbside retail and the manufacturing and supply chains that are required for that retail. And then also, childcare for essential workers has been expanded. We've opened up our open space. Actually, the open space has been open, but what we had done is limited access to that open space to walking and biking. A lot of those restrictions are off, though, from land manager to land manager and from city to city or town. A local jurisdiction does have discretion on how they manage their parks or open space. Across the board, any facilities that have high touch equipment, climbing equipment for kids, swing sets, things like that, also picnic areas and facilities that support congregating, those kinds of things are closed everywhere, but generally you should see more access to parks and open space within the county of Marin. Still a lot of restrictions out on the coast, and that will continue as they tend to draw large crowds, but things are loosening up on the open space side. All this is happening because, as I said, we do have now testing capacity in place to really be able to not only test our frontline folks and those people who we know have been exposed or are experiencing symptoms of COVID-19, but we have some additional capacity as well, so that when we do have folks that have tested positive, our contact tracing teams can get to work, identify people who have been in contact with someone who was positive, and have those people tested as well. Our target was 500 tests per day capacity, and that is pretty much where we're at, which is all good. And that will really help us as we see the effect and impact of this slow loosening of the economy, more interactions between different people out in the community, because we know there will be more, the disease will spread, and we need to be able to track it, and we need to be able to quarantine those folks who have symptoms and have tested positive, as well as those people who have been exposed. I had on the screen earlier, the rolling slideshow showed the website for marinrecovers.com. Marin Recovers is a larger effort around integrating our public health order and our public health officer with the business and larger community towards helping inform his decisions and businesses' decisions about how they open. The key to Marin Recovers, and I would encourage anyone to go to this website, marinrecovers.com, is to, as we reopen, be providing the appropriate guidelines so that a business or organization can open its doors for business, and maybe with some modified operations towards keeping both their employees safe and reducing the spread of COVID, and also their customers or anybody they would be interacting with in the performance of their business. And the industry advisors group that is part of Marin Recovers we broadly solicited out into the community for people from every walk of the economy, all types of businesses, different sectors of the economy, to volunteer to work in a very concentrated, over a very concentrated time period, just the last 3 weeks, to work with our team leads and think hard about how businesses operate, whether it's a child care facility or a summer camp or an office setting or something, or personal services. What kinds of measures could be put in place to meet the goals of social distancing, that 6 feet of space, the hygiene requirements about keeping clean and not sharing facilities, all the things that we know we need to do to prevent the spread of COVID while we're interacting with each other. And that effort has been really robust. And if you go to marinrecovers.com and you go down to the business section, those drop-down menus for each of the different areas of the economy, slowly but surely we're populating those sites with what are the operational guidelines for that business sector for when they get the green light to open. And as you know, some have gotten the green light, many have not, but over time, over the next few weeks in sort of 2-week intervals, the public health officer and those, the Marin Recovers team are working to, one, make sure the guidelines are in place, and two, give the green light. We can't be ahead of the state. We're trying to keep up with the state at this point, but things are looking good. And the proof will be in the pudding as to how well we can open the economy and open up our lives again without seeing great surges in the spread of this disease, and particularly in those most vulnerable communities. So the onus will be on us as the members of Marin County and our cities and towns, us as residents, as we visit and frequent the different businesses and our workplaces, to be doing all the right things on our part, take individual responsibility. And then also we want to make sure that those businesses that are opening have put in place all the right protocols on their end to protect their employees and the folks that come to their businesses. So that's where I wanted to start on the COVID update. I had a couple questions that came in via email over the last couple days that I'm gonna jump to right now, that are specific to COVID and my part of the conversation. So I think we'll answer those, and then we'll move on to Catherine and Franklin from Larkspur, and then we'll finish up with 10 or 15 minutes of more general Q&A for folks who would like to shoot me one through the Q&A function on this Zoom meeting. So one of the questions that we got was regarding the recent spike in the number of new cases that we've been seeing over the last several days and over the last weekend especially. And it was a significant jump. And basically it can be attributed to mostly the fact that we're conducting a lot more testing over the last week. So as we do more testing, we will see more positives. But the key is going to be, are those positives resulting in serious illness and hospitalizations? And right now we're holding steady. I believe there was just 1 or 2 hospitalizations as of yesterday. So the key is not as much in how many positives, it's in how many serious cases, how quickly is it spreading. There's going to be some sort of equilibrium at some point, but mainly are there folks ending up with serious illness in the hospital? And that's what we really have to keep a check on. We do have, as I said, also the contact tracing capacity now in place. Got a bunch of great volunteers through our medical disaster corps, who are part of our contact tracers, and also some healthcare workers who have come on board. So we're feeling good about our ability to do contact tracing to make sure that people who have been exposed to folks who have tested positive are also quarantining and preventing spread. And the last question was, does Marin plan to make diagnostic and antibody testing available for those who want it? And the answer is yes, that's something that we are going to want to be able to do. There is a lot of brands, a lot of different tests out on the market, both diagnostic antibody that are diagnostic tests that may be easier to perform, but have not yet, I think, been codified as meeting the mark in terms of not having the false positives or the false negatives. And antibody testing is still in the development form. And I think that's about it. And and a related question about immunity. And we still don't have clear evidence of the length of immunity if someone has been sick and acquired the disease, if there's a long-lasting immunity just from having contracted the disease. And in terms of the vaccines that are on the market, of course, we're too early to even talk about that. So more to come there. Bottom line, though the medical community continues to learn more about this disease, we have a lot more to learn. But the one thing we know for sure is if you are in a vulnerable high-risk category, if you are older, if you have underlying conditions, this disease is very threatening. For many of us, it won't be as threatening, but there is a good portion of our population, given the age of Marin County, with, I want to say approaching 30% of our population is over the age of 65. We have a lot of people just age-wise who are vulnerable, and of course we do have plenty of folks with underlying conditions, and many fall in both the age group and in that age group. So I think with that, there's a little rambling. Go to marinrecovers.com for more information about the reopening process. Go to the Marin coronavirus main website for information on the daily updates on testing results and hospitalizations, and continue to read the newspaper and listen to the radio and learn along the way. So with that, I am going to welcome in and ask Catherine and Franklin to turn on your videos. There you are. Hello.
Hello.
Hopefully. Is that a gallery view? Can you tell? Or is that speaker view?
It's a gallery view for me. But
that's good. Okay.
Good. Well, great.
Hi, Catherine. Catherine,
Hi.
Mayor of Larkspur. Welcome. I'm going to hand over to you and let you talk a little bit about Larkspur and also introduce your fine new librarian.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Rice. And for those of you who are watching, welcome to this Thursday afternoon. It's a beautiful afternoon, and we're looking forward to a fabulous sunny weekend. So when Supervisor Rice reached out to me and asked if I would like to participate, I said, definitely would like to talk about what's going on in Larkspur as we all continue sheltering in place and staying safe with COVID-19. And then I wanted to bring up two things that I think makes Larkspur unique. One is our fabulous library, and also the opportunity that we have to really share our library with much of the lower Ross Valley. And then the other part I want to talk about was just what the Central Marin Fire Department and other areas of Central Marin are doing as far as defensible space inspections, which will be starting up. So just to begin, we have been in Larkspur, as all of our other communities, trying very hard to enact the health department orders to protect our community while providing as much service as safely possible. We've been doing a lot in the last several weeks, actually since the very beginning, in making sure we're providing the best and safest services that we can do with a limited stay-at-home platform that all of our employees have to work from, except our first responders. And it's taken a lot of support of our local businesses as we reach out more and more to them. As we all know, the shelter in place occurred in March, early March, which meant we had to close City Hall. And our lovely 1913 City Hall houses our small, quaint library. And it's a library that is owned and run by the city of Larkspur, which is one of the fewer ones in Marin County that is owned by the city of Larkspur. And we have a large reach out to the lower part of the Ross Valley. I know many people like to come to our library, particularly for its small reading room area and for its really terrific collection. So one thing I thought would be interesting to talk about today is our new librarian, who I'd like to introduce to the community. Franklin joined us January, I think 20th. He'll explain a little bit more. Then we had just a short 6 weeks for him to sort of learn the process and the people, and then we had the shelter in place. So, but that hasn't stopped our library from serving our community, and I would love to have Franklin now talk about the programming that he's doing, the future programming, and how you can still access your library resources in Larkspur.
So it was I've just moved here from Southern California right on Boxing Day, and I started really right after the new year. So I was getting ready, I was learning the library, meeting our community partners, getting my head around the library. And yeah, we actually closed a little before the shelter in place went into effect, just because we couldn't maintain social distancing in the library. And so when we originally closed, we thought we would start the curbside service. We would get some work done inside the building. And we were sort of excited because it gave us a chance to really spruce up the inside, move things around, make it a little more easier to access. And then after that first day of doing that, the shelter in place order was coming and we were basically all sent home. So we've really had to pivot the way we've done our business. For the longest time, we've had an ebook collection. We have a lot of digital resources, but since we've been closed, that's what we really had to pivot and show off, our ebook collections. One exciting thing for as a librarian, we've always had a children's and teen ebook collection, but it was very underused. And since the shelter in place went up, those two collections have been really highly used now. That stuff that as librarians, we purchase books, we buy books, and we hope that they check out. We hope that the readers will find them. And it's finally happened. You know, the books are being checked out electronically. Audiobooks are being downloaded. So it really just a big shift. We've also added teaching resources because we knew parents now had to, you know, especially little ones that weren't going to school. Story time is our big early learning, early literacy opportunity, and not having a story time where parents could come in to learn those basics. So we've added a huge chunk of e-teaching resources on our website that has vocabulary, wordplay, stuff to give parents some resources to use with their children. That's been a big shift of what we're doing. So we started to move and really highlight those parts of our collection and our website that had been buried. And just trying to make sure we got the word out, and we're spreading the word. And the good thing is that we are part of the Marin net too. So with all these shared resources, all of us have sort of band together and really have started to really show people that, you know, our library really is open 24/7. You can access our databases, you can access ebooks, you can access a lot of stuff remotely. When we first started—
Franklin, can you explain what MarinNet is?
So the MarinNet is a consortium that sort of links all the libraries together. What the MarinNet is too, it's our main catalog is all shared. And basically it makes all the libraries in the county one library, even though Larkspur is separate. If you've got a library card in Larkspur, you could go anywhere in the county and use it. And it's the same way. If you lived in Corte Madera, you lived in San Rafael, if you live in West Marin, you can come and use our library with no problem. There's certain things that you can and cannot access, but that's, you know, with the technology, and it's not always our doing it. A lot of the vendors won't let us do certain things. But it really just makes it easier. And it's always been a big thing for us because we are small, that we can't have this rich, in-depth, you know, these archives of old titles. We just don't have the space.
Yeah.
And so it gives readers.
That's been a constraint challenge, has been in our library for a while. which is why a number of years ago we started a plan and a proposal to build a new library and community center on a Rose Lane parcel, which is on Doherty Drive. And that, as those who come to Larkspur will notice, the empty lot is still there because we're still in the process of its design and funding. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has thrown everything up in the air as far as where we're going to have the resources to put in the future. But we won't put that plan on the shelf just yet, because we really, really want to see a fabulous new library and community center. Which brings me to how we're going to, in the future, utilize sort of community service with a library and park and rec combination now, in an effort to provide the services in a financially constrained time. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you imagine programming can be?
Well, right now our programming is, it's all going to be virtual. And we've started doing that this last weekend we started our garden talks. So we have we're doing this every Saturday with the help of the Commons Foundation, Joe Jennings, and the UC Master Gardeners. So we have a lot of talks lined up. We had our first virtual book club. We were trying to get the book clubs back up and going. And we have the Friends of the Library made it possible for us to buy the Zoom platform so we can do all these programs. But the way that our Larkspur is, we're facing some challenges financially. And I know in July, I'll become the Community Services Director, and I'll actually be overseeing recreation and the library. So it's just trying to make sure that we still provide services and things that people want, but we're just gonna have to do it in a virtual way. And for me, the big challenge is now recreation, because it's, I've always thought, the library should partner. Me and Dick had talked about this when I first got here, was trying to make sure that we're doing something together to get the library out in the community, because the only way that, and that was the other thing too, a lot of people didn't know we have these resources, and the best way for us to market that is to go out into the community, to be at events. And a lot of stuff that we were excited to be doing has all, stopped because of COVID. So right. It's just trying to do these new things, and we're really hoping that as we move forward with the virtual programming, more and more people will sign up and get connected. We know there are a lot of patrons, and Catherine knows that I've been worried about this. We have a lot of patrons who aren't tech savvy, who use the library to access the internet, email, a lot of these things, or the people who just love having a physical book. I'm a librarian. I love books. I love digital books. But when digital books first happened, I wasn't that keen on them. It wasn't until the middle of the night I finished a book and I wanted to read the next one in the series that I finally learned how to read on my iPad. And I read a 800-page book, and there was a time where I thought I would never read a book on my phone. And 2 years ago, I read an entire book on my phone.
So Franklin says the library is open 24 hours a day. He's not there online 24 hours a day, but we are providing, and your staff is providing phone-in reference help, which is, and through our other online media platforms like Instagram and Twitter and our city website, you can get a lot of information that way. But do you want to talk a little about referencing? Because I know you do a lot of reference phone calls. Yeah,
we finally figured out how to turn Google Voice on and then access our phones remotely. So we are answering when people leave us messages. We return their call. I've talked to a lady who, a patron that I had met in person when I first got here, who was learning how to use her Libby, her Overdrive app for ebooks. And, I just walked her through it. So it's a way for us to walk people through our technology, especially if you discover it, sometimes you can get stuck. And so we have been able to walk people through where they get stuck at. I know Larkspur, we're very friendly. So a lot of patrons didn't have their library cards because we know who they are. We just check them out. My staff really, that was one thing I really loved about Larkspur when I first got here. It's a small community. It was similar to the one I had come from, but more so that the staff knows everybody. We know the people who come in. It's staff like me who would ask people for a library card and they're taking it back.
Franklin, towards all those friendly faces that you want to see in person, and I want to bridge this with the COVID response. So I know that you have either been updated or have been part of the conversations about how libraries, and every library is a little bit different in terms of its physical space and things, but how are the libraries and Larkspur specifically, but also generally, thinking about adapting the way they're going to be doing their actual in-person library functions, because we're not going to stay virtual forever. And in fact, and I think in the near term, doors will be opening for libraries, will be allowed to be open. But if you could just talk about some of the adaptations you think the libraries will have to be doing, and this will maybe help folks understand the challenges of why we can't just, say, let's go back to normal. Businesses can open, but they have to find ways to adapt. And then I think you may also be in part of the conversations around summer camps and recreation, because I know right now there's a lot of work going on how to adapt summer camp models, day camps to this COVID situation. And I believe they're going to be based a lot on the protocols that have been put in place for childcare around small groups and outdoor settings. But I think it would be good for folks to understand what you're all having to think about in both those two areas, because I think we'd all like to be in person sooner rather than later, and we're finding ways to make that happen.
Well, the good news is, yesterday when I talked to you, I was really bummed because libraries weren't included in that phase 2 process. But this morning we finally got some guidelines from the state librarian that now includes us in the phase 2 process. So the Marin board the directors met this morning. We've been working on plans because we need to bring a plan to Marin Recovers so they know how we're going to proceed, how we're going to make sure that we make sure the staff are safe, that the public is safe. So we're working on those. And so this morning we're really excited because this came out. So this is moving us closer to reopening. For the library, once we get this go ahead and we can return to the building, return to work, we're going to start out with doing curbside service. So the same thing we did that first day we closed. That way people who have been waiting to get their holds can get them in. We have a process of when books come back in, we're going to quarantine them for 3 days before they're sent back out or released back out to the public. So in the first few weeks, it will be just, we're going to try to make sure that we can do curbside, because just getting the books into people's hands is the most important thing. Fulfilling holds people who, there were some lucky people who got their holds that Monday we opened. But after that, there are a lot of people who haven't. So we're excited. So I'm hoping in the next few weeks that we can get to that point. Closing for all the Marinette libraries was really easy. The hard part is reopening. Both San Rafael and the county, a lot of their staff are disaster service workers at the moment. So until they're released, they really can't get their libraries truly staffed as full as they want. And so we know that that's a challenge. But for a staff like mine, which is really small, we could go in the next 2 days and get it all ready to go. But a lot of stuff, because we're part of Marinette and our catalogs are linked, it sort of makes it a little harder. But this is why having a plan to move forward gets us all on the same page. Because the other worry is the first library who's open becomes where everybody goes or where everybody returns stuff to. And as a small library, if we open first, we'd be overwhelmed with returns. And so we're just trying to make sure that we're all on the same page as a library. As for recreation, we're still looking at the guidelines. I know the American Camp Association has put out some guidelines to help us restart summer camps. The difficulty was that there's such a restriction right now of how many kids can be around, how many healthcare. One of the crazy things I heard was about the restrooms, like how do you take care of the restrooms? And it's just like, so I think too, as time goes by, we'll start to, the guidelines will get better. We'll have it and it'll open up, because I know a lot of people I know the rec staff, when I first started, they were all about summer camp. We were getting ready for summer camp.
Super cool summer school is very popular in our area.
So it's just, once we get guidelines, and I think once those guidelines are really, and I think because it's still very fluid. It has been very fluid from the beginning. So as these guidelines get hammered out and things get, work out, stuff will get better and we'll be able to accommodate more.
Right.
But at some point in time to the library, because we really can't maintain that social distancing, we're going to have to do appointment, come browse by appointment.
Right.
And that way we want to get people, because we want people to come in. We love talking to patrons.
Yeah.
Library, Catherine knows I'm a chatterbox.
Yeah,
We love to talk about books. We love to talk about the library, all the staff. We love to do what we do, and we love the public we work
Well,
with.
then there's just something so wonderful about being in a library space. There's just nothing like it. I mean, every library here is different from, Mill Valley to Larkspur to the Civic Center, but there's just something about being in a physical space of a library with those books that can't be replicated, and also to get your hands on a real book.
And
So,
I think Franklin speaks to the flexibility we all need to have for how our individual cities and our services open up, because even though there may be opening in other places, it may not be feasible at the certain time in certain districts and communities. For instance, in Larkspur, we have a very big park, Piper Park, which has been open to the public to access throughout all of this when it was allowed by walking there or by cycling there, but we are yet to open the parking lot. It was a question that did come in a little earlier, and really because our primary focus is the health and safety of our community. And that park is a very regionally accessed park for large barbecue party playing groups. And with the Memorial Day weekend coming up, starting tomorrow, we're concerned that we don't have the staffing to properly patrol and to make sure that people are safe there and not gathering in large groups. So to answer a question that came in earlier, we will be reevaluating it after the Memorial weekend, so that large groups of use of the parking lot won't be done this weekend. But stay tuned for that, because we're all adapting to these changes based on what our own our own staffing levels are that provide for the safety of our staff as well as our visitors.
yeah. And then along with that, the questioner was also asking about the Corte Madera Creek walking bike path, the running path, and so none of the current order and all the jurisdictions are allowing folks to walk or bike to any of their parks pretty much. And the same with accessing like the Corte Madera Creek multi-use path. And we really don't have a way, and aren't, I don't think at this point, trying to access to that multi-use path, or frankly, you're not preventing Larkspur residents from going to Piper Park if they're walking or biking. But we are asking all residents and all visitors, and there'll be more and more signage out there, and there will be more bodies and staff and rangers in different places. But we need residents and citizens and visitors to comply with the rules of trying to keep their distance. And when you're outside, you don't necessarily have to wear a mask, but if maintain 6 feet of distance between you. But if you're in a place that's going to be more crowded, even if it is outside, you should be wearing a mask. And that's why we ask people to carry something with them. So it's on us as individuals to also be as courteous and responsible as possible, because it would really be impossible. It would be impossible to close off all these public places to outside visitors. Frankly, it wouldn't be right. And given that this is going to be an extended period of us needing to abide by these social distancing and health regimes, we're going to need to do it. We're going to need to take responsibility ourselves. And I think that we can do that, and we will get there. Anything else in terms, I've got a couple other questions, not specific to Larkspur, but
okay.
I think what I wanted to ask more generally, Catherine, as we're winding up, is beyond the library and recreation, what are you seeing as the biggest challenges for municipal government from where you're sitting in Larkspur over the near term and longer?
Well, I think the biggest issue we're all going to face is that we have been significantly affected in our financial and our bottom line. Larkspur relies heavily on sales tax and property tax. And property taxes have come in and stayed pretty level, and we're anticipating that they'll be fine. Sales tax and transient occupancy tax has plummeted all over the state, if not the country. So there will be a lot of shifting around of how we can provide services safely. We'll have a lot of different tools in our toolkit to try to make sure that we maintain the level of service that we can with the money that we have. Making sure that when we figure out maybe as the budgets repair, how we can continue to add services and things that the community wants. But I also don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we live in an area that is fire prone, and we have disasters that are sometimes can happen and in coordination with other disasters. You can see what's happening in Michigan now, where there's some huge flooding and dam breaking. Well, what we worry about in Marin is, and in the North Coast area here, is wildland fire. So I think what we'll start to make sure people are paying attention to is, even though you're staying at home, you can still do, and you are required to do, fire safe vegetation management around your home and your property. And that's what we're going to be focusing on now to make sure we don't lose sight of that. The new JPA that was passed in March, the Wildland Fire Protection Plan, and also the inspections that we'll be doing on land and properties are starting up soon. So it's something we can't lose sight of while we are still trying to manage our shelter in place and this slow phase of opening, and really bringing our small businesses back to the extent that they can. We can't lose sight of the fact that September, October, November are right around the corner. So one thing that we're very proud of in Larkspur is that between the city of Larkspur and the town of Corte Madera, last year we were able to combine our fire departments, and now we have the Central Marin Fire Department, and working in a cooperative relationship also with the Kentfield Fire District. We will, as that group, be able to provide tremendous support to our community in getting themselves prepared for wildland fire season, which is coming up. Everyone should have gotten or will be getting a defensible space and home evaluation notification in the mail. Mine arrived yesterday, and I encourage everyone to look at that, because we're very serious about making sure that our community is as protected and as safe from the threat of wildland fire as possible. So we're all worrying about all those things, and local governance needs the support of our community to do this. And it needs the support of our community to buy local and shop local when you get a chance. Larkspur has some award-winning restaurants, and we are really missing our restaurant world right now. And it's going to be very important that when we have a chance to get back to purchasing items, to shop local, and to really support the local business community.
Yeah, well, it was perfect that you brought up the wildfire. I had a question about wildfire, and then also a follow up on the local government's loss of revenue that we're going to have to be dealing with. So on the wildfire front, yes, and Larkspur, Kentfield, Corte Madera doing all the things they're supposed to be doing, and around getting ready for we're almost now entering it. If we hadn't had that rain, we would have been in wildfire season. The Measure C, which created the countywide JPA. I believe they are having their first board meeting maybe today.
Right now.
Right now. And they actually have I believe, are looking at a work plan to trigger and start getting some things done in advance of actually the parcel tax flowing into the JPA coffers. So really trying to get a jump on that prevention work. And I think some of that is probably syncing up with what you just talked about, Catherine, in terms of the inspections. So the community should know that while we have this intense focus on the COVID response at the local level and the county level, we have not forgotten about implementing and delivering the services that we're supposed to as communities, but also preparing for the other threats and challenges that we face. And wildfire is right up there at the top and not going away. And the question that came in through the email was, are we doing any prep? Are we preparing for wildfire season? Are we preparing to stand up shelters in a COVID environment? We could have fires this fall. Marin County is off. It will need to stand up potentially evacuation shelters. And yes, I can tell the community that the planning is going on right now for how to deal with wildfire response, with standing up evacuation shelters, with dealing with the PG&E power shutoffs that are inevitably going to happen, though hopefully in a more refined way this fire season, all under the umbrella of and the environment of knowing different protocol with regards to social distancing and keeping people healthy and safe with COVID running around the community. So we have an emergency operations planning committee. The EOC is working both on COVID and making plenty of space for wildfire season. Those plans and planning is being done, and I feel really good about that. I did have scheduled for a county board meeting coming up in the summer, and I'm not sure when it's going to be now, to actually hold a workshop to share exactly the kind of planning and preparations that are being done around our emergency response for wildfire and other disaster. And then the second, to dovetail on your comment around the fiscal hurt that most local governments are going to find themselves in, two things are going on. We're looking at, and the cities and towns in CSAC and the counties statewide will probably be jumping onto the same lobbying bandwagon to make sure that some of the federal response monies that are coming out, there's another tranche coming that is going to cities or counties and local government, really lobbying to try to have some of that be used to backfill on revenue loss through sales tax. And I don't think it should be lost on any of us that it's not that people aren't buying things anymore. They're purchasing online and they're going to the Amazons and the big box. So there's got to be a way to shift some of that growth that's happening in online purchasing and get it back to the cities and towns and help supporting those small businesses actually stay online and recover, because even as doors open, it's inevitable that our local businesses are not going to have the same local foot traffic and activity as people continue to be concerned about their own health with COVID in the environment. So I wanted to,
and I think, Supervisor, to that point, most of the cities have their city's website has a COVID-19 sort of banner bar on most of them that are providing links and information about what restaurants are open, what services that you can find, where you can find the latest health data and information. It's very hard to keep them up and timely as we struggle to do that. But that's really, and all the Chamber of Commerces have those things up too. The Larkspur Green Break Kentfield area has our Chamber of Commerce under Larkspur Chamber of Commerce, and we're trying to keep as much of that data updated as to who's open, who's doing curbside delivery, who's doing Dutch door delivery. That's a new term I just learned, actually. Dutch door shopping, where half the door is open and the bottom half the door is shut. I didn't know that. So Dutch door shopping, things like that. And I encourage everyone in the community to look at those resources online and stay up to date on what's available. So you stay at home and not go out until you know if the store is open.
That's right. But do try to do that shopping local, and try to stay local even in our travels now to various different parks and open space. Though that travel, the motorized travel restriction may have been lifted. We don't want to cause problems with parking issues, and which can happen locally as well as on our regional destinations. Anyway, well, I want to thank Franklin, you, our librarian. I can't wait to see you actually in the building. And Mayor Way, thank you for coming.
Sure.
And sharing. And for all those folks who tuned into this Zoom, thank you for joining us, and hope you got something out of this. We're going to continue to have these Zooms every other week, try to invite different people from throughout the district to share and keep people updated. And in the meantime, I would just ask that everybody take care of yourselves and each other. Cover your face when you're out in public. Wash your hands all the time. maintain your social distance when you're out doing your business, and be courteous and kind to each other as we manage through this very difficult, strange, and unusual time. But I have confidence that we'll make it through okay, especially when we band together the way we have. So
So
with that,
in
say
the chat
goodbye,
box,
Frank.
I put a link in for our fire smart garden planning workshop we're doing on May 30th.
Oh yes, give a plug.
So there's a link there just to our Eventbrite where you can register for the program. There was a question too in the chat about how Larkspur and Marin County residents best support our vulnerable citizens through this.
Oh, I didn't see that. I'm sorry.
For the library, what we're hoping to do is eventually to get a homebound services program started. So we'll need volunteers that are willing to go to people's, because we know a lot of people are not going to want to leave their homes. So we're going to need volunteers to help deliver books to patrons, and especially when we can get back in the building. So if you're wanting to help out, wait for us to get back in and let us know, because like I said, we're going to need volunteers to help us take books to people, pick them up from people's homes, just so we can make sure that everybody gets a book in their hands. So, and then the other one is, are we going to take questions too?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is, because we're over time as it is, but I wanted to answer, and I'm sorry I didn't see the chat questions. I was looking at the Q&A questions. There's too many options here. In terms of our vulnerable residents, it's actually been one of the primary focus, frankly, for the county, because we are responsible for our most vulnerable and our safety net folks. Foods, nutrition services, rent support, rental assistance. Even now we're looking at, frankly, wage assistance for when we have to when folks test positive who are needing to quarantine, and quarantining means a loss of wages. We've got to find a way to try to support those folks. So very much our eye on the ball of our seniors and residents who already may have been spending too much time at home and alone, and now are doing so even more for fear of going out in the community. A lot of focus on trying to get them not only what their needs, their nutritional needs are, but also their social and interaction needs, and support them. Really great things happening in every community. Locally, people started putting their own brand on how do we connect with each other? How do we connect with those that are gonna have the highest needs, but also maybe have the hardest time connecting with others during this time. So I could go on and on, but the lens very, very much on who are the folks that are going to have the most difficult time making it through this period, this COVID-19 climate that we're in. So with that, I am going to sign off. It is 5:47. We're 15 minutes over, but that's okay.
Thank you, Katie.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Franklin.
Thank you, Franklin. And thanks everybody for joining us. See you in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.